In 2010, 95 young Armenians embarked on a 3-day march to Ottawa from Montreal. They did this in commemoration of the 1.5 million Armenians who perished in the Armenian Genocide of 1915, many of whom marched to their deaths in Deir Zor. The question that came up perhaps most often among the people these youth came across was, what compels one to still care so much about a genocide that took place so long ago? In other words, what does the Armenian Genocide mean to you today?
Well, it's not just the atrocities or the killings, it's more the fact that the Turks, they continue to deny. And they throw their economic and political weight around. We see this in our universities, and we see this in our colleges and all over the place.
Every year, hundreds of Canadian Armenians travel to Ottawa on April 24th to protest the denial of the genocide to the Turkish embassy. The same activity takes place in all countries around the world with an Armenian population.
It's a matter of identity. As human beings, we have to go about our lives telling people who we are and how we got here.
You know, we do this like a habit, like a tradition. It's something that we have to do. We can't just let the Turkish embassy just sit there, you know, thinking it's okay. The Armenians have forgotten. You know, time heals all wounds.
Sadly, this struggle for justice is often the most immediately recognizable feature of the Armenian identity. This wound that has yet to close stains our cultural identity and overshadows our cultural richness, which dates back nearly 4,000 years. Instances of Turkish denial are currently taking place. For example, in Concordia University, where Turkish students attempt to portray the genocide as a contestable matter that is up for debate by engaging in a campus-wide poster battle with the Armenian students. The genocide's denial rarely finds an audience in the mainstream media, and when it does, it rarely gets to the heart of the matter. In these cases where the issue has caught the media's attention, Turkish hired lobbyists and PR firms have been quick to attempt to portray today's Turkey as a progressive, fair, and democratic state, and the Armenians as a buzzing and enraged nuisance who are attempting to impede Turkey's economic engine. Almost as though to add insult to injury, Armenians can only watch idly by as Turkish Elle magazine publishes a set of photos from a fashion shoot using the stolen sacred medieval churches of Ani as a backdrop. These ancient Armenian churches have been torn down and neglected as part of Turkey's attempt to rewrite history.
But imagine we're in the middle of the Armenian quarter, one of the main Armenian quarters of Harput, and nothing remains. This is where the St. Hagop Church was, Hagop Church. That's where the Euphrates College was, with the boys' schools, girls' schools, the theological seminary, Wheeler Hall. It's amazing how much of history can be, the physical remains of history, or the obvious physical remains of history can be erased. And you know, they construct sort of holiday homes on top. You would think there was never anything here in the first place. It was just wilderness.
Since the fall of the Ottoman Empire, Turkish denial of the genocide has gradually changed over the years. In 2006, Ara Hasserjian, editor of the Blue Book report on the genocide, traveled to Turkey. The Istanbul University was hosting a symposium aimed at examining Turkish-Armenian relations. The conference featured numerous denialist lecturers, including Justin McCarthy and Dr. Kemal Çiçek. Here in the heart of Turkey, we saw the early forms of denial, aimed at discrediting selected archives that proved genocide.
But Armenian scholars don't know that we accept this, that some Turks killed some Armenians. But the government had nothing to do with these killings, because when they heard such killings, they punished this. That is what our point of view, and that is what makes the difference between killing people and making genocide.
One of the things that Çiçek said was that Turks accept there were massacres, but they were not genocide. I think that's a shrewd move on his part, because it's much closer to the evidence. It focuses the debate now not whether there were mass killings or mass abuse of Armenians, but whether there was genocide. And that's sort of the core of what they're trying to, deniers are today trying to avoid, not to use a G word. But if you look at Çiçek or likes of Çiçek like McCarthy, it's a new admission on their part, because that's not something they would have said 20 years ago when they had a much more maximalist policy of not only denying the Armenian genocide, but even saying Armenians were the ones who killed Turks.
At last year's commemoration, Robert Fisk explained how one need not look further than the Turkish-run orphanages to see such brutally obvious evidence for systematic and state-sponsored execution of genocide.
But Article 2 of the 1951 UN Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide specifically states that the definition of genocide, to destroy in whole or in part a national, ethnical, racial or religious group, includes forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. This is exactly what the Turks did in Lebanon. The Turks did indeed commit genocide, legally commit genocide in the legal sense of the word genocide. Barack Obama and Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, who so pitifully tried and are trying to prevent the US Congress acknowledging the massacre of 1.5 million Armenians, should go there to this Lebanese hilltop village and hang their heads in shame, for this is a tragic, appalling tale of brutality against small and defenseless children whose families had already been murdered by Turkish forces during the First World War. Photographs still exist, I've got them here, of hundreds of near-naked Armenian children performing physical exercises in the college grounds. One even shows Jamal Pasha standing on the steps in 1916. Some of them were to recall, long before they died, how they were forced to grind up and eat the skeletons of their dead fellow child orphans in order to survive starvation.
The Turkish-Armenian protocols of 2008 were Turkey's more recent effort to take advantage of a disparity in political and economic strength to reverse the progress on the issue. Statements by Turkish officials surrounding the protocol process made it clear. Signing on would invariably lead the Armenian concessions on the genocide issue.
These accords are simply Turkey's latest denial tactic, Ankara's present weapon of choice to deny truth, to obstruct justice, and to deprive the Armenian nation of the security required for its survival.
The strategy had shifted from attempting to discredit archives to simply distracting the observers by creating an illusion of progressive and fair negotiation. Now, in 2011, the debate has shifted gears once again. Dr. Taner Akçam, honored Turkish historian and professor who is an outspoken advocate of genocide recognition, examines the stated Turkish political rationale of protecting national security.
Why is the discussion of historic injustices something that goes to the heart of the human rights, perceived as a threat to Turkish national security? From late Ottoman times to the present, there has been a continuous tension in Ottoman Empire between the Ottoman state's concerns for secure borders and the society's need to come to terms with abuses of human rights. The main flaw of Turkish security concept is the perception that the promotion of basic democratic rights, such as equality under the law, social reform, and freedom of speech, are a threat to a national security. So Armenians were asking nothing else but equality and social reforms, which arguably would have led to a better Ottoman society. The Armenians were the modernizers and the reformers of the Ottoman society. Their demands and the Armenians themselves were considered a security threat, which led to them being targeted for massacre and deportations. Today, the demand for an honest account of history is being handled in the same way as a security problem. The irony is that criminalizing historical inquiries for national security reasons is not only a huge obstacle on the path of democracy, but also is counterproductive and leads directly to real security problem of Turkey today. This is what we call the self-fulfilling prophecy. You cannot solve any problem in the Middle East today without addressing historic wrongdoings, because history is not something in the past. Past is the present in the Middle East. I think the last events showed it very clearly.
Today, Armenians emphasize the importance of meaningful steps towards the rectification of the issue. truth commissions, reparations programs, memorialization efforts. These are the means by which our nations may look forward towards the goal of complete reconciliation. Canadian sensitivity to the matter has been exemplary, even as early as in the years immediately following the genocide.
We heard in Cyprus that we were going to go to Canada, and no one knew where Canada was. You know?
Composed of some prominent Canadians, the Armenian Relief Association came up with a scheme to bring some of these orphans to Canada.
Boys first. We'll teach them to become farmers and fruit growers.
In spite of government reluctance to allow the admission of Armenian refugees, the association
received permission from the Dominion government to bring to Canada 100 Armenian orphan boys to arrive at its farm in Georgetown, Ontario.
With the designation of their farmhouse as a historic site in Canada, Canadian commitment to the remembrance and celebration of its own diverse heritage was renewed.
The initiative to designate this site was important in order to preserve Georgetown Armenian Boys Farm not only for its historic value, but rather, more importantly, as a site that has a significant educational purpose for Canadians of all ages.
The annual commemoration ceremony at the Armenian Community Centre has been where Canadians have borne witness to their leaders' affirmation of the Canadian stance. Since the passage of the parliamentary resolution Bill M380, Conservative, Liberal, Bloc, and NDP parties have taken a firm stance recognizing the events of 1915 as genocide and a gross violation of human rights, and they have resolved to remain unwavering in this commitment.
Both houses of Parliament have adopted resolutions recognizing these events as the first genocide of the 20th century. I join with you today in remembering the past and ensuring hope for a future based on peace and mutual respect. Signed sincerely, the Right Honourable Stephen Harper, Prime Minister of Canada.
But there are certain subjects on which we do not disagree, in which there is total unity across the House of Commons of Canada. And that is the uniform belief in the House of Commons of Canada, the political party that I represent, the political party that he represents, that the crimes of 1915 were a genocide, that this genocide is a crime against humanity that has caused untold suffering and horror.
The role we play in Canada is to remain unwavering in our call to Turkey, demanding that they permit dialogue on the genocide within their own borders and come to terms with the past. As a proven leader for human rights, Canada has the opportunity to lead by example once again in adopting Taner Akçam's proposal to the U.S. first.
My last word is an appeal to the United States government, especially on the light of these latest events in the Middle East. Instead of, in the Middle East, helping those dictatorial regimes or those who deny past injustices and make this denying a part of their security concept, United States government policy should integrate an honest confrontation with history into a policy of national interest of United States in the Middle East. Thank you very much for listening.